And now, the Two Guys, One Shaker Cup podcast, hosted by Joshua Shaw and Ryan Buckeye.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome inside Two Guys, One Shaker Cup podcast. Josh Shaw, live from Austin, Texas, baby. And Ryan here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Completely different. Like, it's crazy. Like, do you want to take the snow? Can you take all the snow behind me and just bring it down by you? And I'll take whatever. What is it, like 80 degrees by you right now?
I was going to say, it's like 75. It is raining today, which I was about to complain about, but now that I can see outside and see that there's a little bit of dusting of snow out there, I'm not envious of you.
Does any part of you miss the snow?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Did you ever ski or cheerleading?
After you move away from the snow, you realize like how terrible it actually is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is fucking terrible. It is terrible. And another thing people think, this is a bad transition, another thing people might think is terrible is what Josh and I refer to as sort of like the Amazon effect in the world. And the Amazon has been blamed a lot for things from other people within the industry and spaces saying, well, Amazon did this or Amazon did that. Overall, from a personal standpoint, Josh, I want to ask you, like, do you think what's your personal take on Amazon in terms of what they've done for business in general?
I mean, I can't think of one company in recent history that's done more for like small business owners to create like millionaires. I can't even count on my hand the amount of people that I know that have been able to be successful in part or in large part to Amazon. I think that, you know, they created this kind of unique flywheel that has, you know, some benefits and negatives depending on which stakeholder you are. But if you are like a small business owner, you have this ability to get potentially millions of people to see your product out there. And it's just a matter of, do you know how to utilize the platform or not?
I totally agree. Like, Amazon within our industry is interesting because people like bodybuilding.com will be like, Amazon has really cut into our sales. Yeah, they have, but that means they're doing something right. You know, people are going to Amazon to purchase. Then what is it that you're not doing that they do, and why are they depleting your sales? From a supplement brand side of things, like Amazon is another platform. They're basically a retail outlet for you to sell your product. And like Amazon is the number one space for sports nutritional supplements today. Correct?
Yeah.
Do you know what the split is?
Yeah, in terms of overall revenue, Amazon would be as big, if not a little bit bigger than Walmart overall. So, I mean, neither one of those corporations break out the categorical sales, so it's kind of like a toss-up in terms of that, but that's totally different. I mean, for not just online sales, Amazon for sure is the number one, and then physical retail is probably Walmart.
Yeah, I think, in terms of like when you were talking before about small business owners and the millionaires, was that comment basically geared towards the generalized business sense, or were you thinking actually within dietary supplements?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking more general, just business owners as general merchandise, kind of whatever. There were so many opportunities in every category. I do, though, think that there was a ton of opportunity for supplement brands to make a good amount of money, supplement retailers, if they were quick enough to realize that that was going to be a big component of the history of the supplement industry, or just the recent, I guess, the current stage of it. But a lot of people, I think, in the initial, and I'm talking probably like early 2010s, maybe even leaking into late 2000s overall, you had a lot of people that didn't understand Amazon at all, and you also just didn't really like have a lot of people that spoke very highly of them at that frame of time. And I think that's because the substitutes for business in the supplement industry, there was a lot of viable options out there. You had bodybuilding.com that was crushing it. You had a lot of like online retailers that were crushing it. You had both GNC and Vitamin Shop expanding extensively. So it was one of those areas where you didn't really understand the value in the early days for the supplement category with Amazon. Amazon had obviously been a very big business before that, but they were focused more on categories that maybe were outside of supplements. So I think until like the late 2000s was the time where people perked up a little bit and started to realize how to utilize Amazon for supplements.
I remember back in 2014, I was at Supplement Warehouse, and we were selling on Amazon as a retailer. That was still a new concept, like an extremely new concept for a retailer to be selling on Amazon. Now, there were brands that were ultimately selling on there. But like for us to sell something as SW, bodybuilding wasn't even selling on there at that point. Bodybuilding.com. Now they are. But but that was a whole new animal for us to learn as a retailer because we know what we know, and that's how we run our retail model and how we do our digital model. We didn't necessarily know the Amazon model. Then you have obviously Prime or Fulfilled by Amazon, which is a different option as well within the Amazon consumer interface system, which you had to learn all those things. So I think maybe when a lot of people look at Amazon and said maybe it's too difficult. Maybe it's too difficult for me to sell on Amazon because if I sell on bodybuilding.com, like they contact me, they submit a PO, I ship them a pallet of product, and that's it. But Amazon's a little bit different. I have to like sign up for all these different specialty programs that they have. Is it supposed to be fulfilled by Amazon? Am I supposed to ship it? Should it be Prime eligible? And I think the complexity, although in the scheme of things it might not be overly complex, it was more complex than what a bodybuilding or a Tiger Fitness was providing, or a direct-to-consumer site, right? Like somebody submits an order on my WooCommerce or Shopify site, it's pretty quick, pretty easy. So I don't know how much hands-on experience you have within the back system of Amazon in terms of shopping, but it's from what I remember, it's probably changed now. Like it wasn't super simple. Like it wasn't cut and dry for us, at least at SW back in 2014. Now it's 6 years later. Maybe it's a lot easier to do it, but I think those who got on it sooner rather than later benefited from Amazon versus being, sort of hurt by the Amazon effect.
Yeah, I mean, I would consider myself like an expert comparable to the experts that are out there. I mean, there are people that are just insane on Amazon. They know that platform and all the kind of interlinkage systems better than they probably know the back of their hand. But I know it enough, and I've worked with it since, I think, 2011. So I've been in some element of...
Old.
Yeah. Of Amazon at differing levels for pretty much the last decade. So I know probably a lot more than the average person, and I definitely know a lot more about Amazon, like from a strategic side of things and just what they have to offer than most people. But I mean, I totally agree with you. I think that there was an element of just newness and people having to learn a completely new way of doing business that was different. If we transport ourselves back to like the early parts of 2010, a lot of people were not even really doing that much on social media with talking to their customers and building relationships and building their brand. And that was kind of the early phase of when Facebook and all those, a few years going in, that they had Facebook pages, and a lot of businesses were starting to use those as communication tools effectively. But you have to think about Amazon, where they're basically doing the same thing. They're saying, hey, we gave you this great marketplace, this great platform, but you have to pretty much build your brand. We're going to give you access to build your listings, and you have to optimize them, and you have to know how to do all this stuff, where most of the time people were dealing with, at that time, wholesale agreements. Basically, like you said, I mean, they were just, hey, here's the PO, and you give it to bodybuilding.com or you give it to GNC, and then at that point, they do all the work. They have the relationships with the customers. They know how to optimize the merchandising to sell it with the pricing and everything and sales, and you're good to go. Basically, you take your net 30 terms, you get your money, you put it in the bank, and you start the process all over again. Amazon wasn't necessarily like that, especially if you were dealing with on the seller side. The vendor side is a similar model, but the seller side, you had to really do a lot of things to actually build your own traffic, build your own momentum on the platform, which was kind of foreign for supplement brands at that time.
Yeah, and you look at supplement brands. There are brands that stayed the hell away from Amazon, like didn't know what to do, didn't touch it, and then you had basically third-party retailers selling their products on there, and then that caused a big stir and breaking MAP, and then all of a sudden now you had to be on Amazon. You had to be on Amazon to protect your MAP pricing, because if you weren't on Amazon didn't give a shit. Amazon wasn't going to go and police the community and say shame on you for breaking MAP, because if you're not going to be good enough to come on our platform, then we're not going to police it for you. I think that's one aspect. But then I want to talk about like brands who actually leveraged the Amazon model and became super successful. And one of the brands that I'm familiar with, I believe you're familiar with too, is the Genius brand. The Genius brand, Robert Oliver over the Genius brand, I don't know if people know his story, but he had been actually working to pitch Amazon to supplement brands. And nobody wanted to do it. Nobody wanted to take him up on that and say, like, let's do this. He was like a seller of a service, I believe, that was going to sell on Amazon for them. And brands are like, no, we know we're good with bodybuilding.com. We're good with Tiger Fitness. We're good with our brick and mortar retail stores. And at some point, Robert's just like, okay, if they're not going to do it, what am I doing? Like, I know this is a ticking time bomb that's going to blow up for somebody who wants to take advantage of it. So he created Genius Brand. Went on Amazon, it fucking blew up. And he created a sustainable business model via Amazon and became probably one of the more popular, if not most popular, like I would say today, popular supplement brands via Amazon, because now they're in Vitamin Shop and bodybuilding.com and different retailers that they weren't in before. But they used Amazon and they worked collectively together. That's not to say that they used the Amazon platform, because it was a win-win situation for both. But to create this, like you mentioned before, small business into like a millionaire business through Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a handful of brands that are probably better known now, but they were not known at all, and they're doing well over $1 million a month, which if you think about the size of businesses in the sports nutrition and supplement industry, that's actually quite a big business. And these brands leveraged Amazon early. And the problem with, I think the Genius brand has probably done the best out of all the brands that have tried to move off platform that were like Amazon only brands. Now, there's still brands, I kind of want to backtrack a little bit here, because there are brands like an Optimum Nutrition or, a Muscle Farm or BPI, or like these brands that are big brands. They do more business than these Amazon only brands on the platform. That's only because they're much bigger brands overall. But we're talking like a specifically Amazon only brand that's built all for Amazon. There are like a lot of sleeper brands that got up to a really good revenue month over month type of a situation. They haven't really been able to jump off the platform into other channels yet. Genius Brand is kind of a little bit different built brand, supplement brand than a lot of these other ones that were more on the low cost side. I think that the Genius Brand was built a little bit different in a way that works in different sales channels. It's still probably early, so I'm just guessing at this point how well it'll do in the future. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that jumped on Amazon early that were able to leverage it into businesses kind of stealth, and nobody really knew. Nobody knew that they were crushing it.
Mm-hmm.
I always had conversations with people. I'd name some brands, and they were like, who's that? And I'm like, exactly. You don't know who they are, but they're crushing people because of them being on a platform in an area that a lot of people just didn't understand very well.
Yeah, and it wasn't. Again, I'm not going to say it was super complex, but I think it just didn't take time. Like, that wasn't a focus of theirs. I don't think anybody really truly believed in Amazon for a while. And then, Prime and then Prime Day and all these different things came out, and it's like, shit, we're behind the 8 ball now. We're not on Amazon. Now we're trying to play catch up. And the worst feeling in the world is when you feel like you're behind and you have to play catch up as a brand, as a retailer. Because Amazon, obviously, right? Amazon is, they started out, Jeff Bezos started out Amazon's like as this community of shopping, like a shopping community, right? At some point, he was able to leverage it into more of a money generating thing by saying, okay, now we have so many brands on here. Now we're going to charge you for advertising on this platform. And like he leveraged one thing after another. They put in a huge investment up front, and now to win, you have to pay for ads. But on top of that, like, you know what? I can win too, because we have all this sales data. And this is the best part. And this is where private label and grocery stores, kind of came onto the digital storefront. When you have years of sales data on popular categories, on popular SKUs, you can look through those and say, okay, these products are selling and why. And you can they're probably generating X amount of profit margin on this. We can do it cheaper and still make more money. And I think, and not to jump ahead in the conversation, but Amazon traditionally wasn't like big into sports nutritional supplements until probably 2014, 2015, when they actually sponsored the the Olympia. Amazon Sports Nutrition was the brand is what they kind of, and they were on the big banners in Vegas. And I don't know if you were at this one or not. I'm sure you probably were, but they streamed the Olympia. Like, they were part of the streaming service that year of the event. And this was the last year that you had Kai Green and Phil Heath. So it was a big year. People knew in terms of the Olympia, it was a big year. They had the streaming thing. They were a title sponsor up there with some of the other brands that pay all that money. But they were all in on sports nutritional supplements at that time. And this was before they even had their own private label. But they sensed something, I think, through the movement data that they had on the platform, and said, like, this is an area that we understand is going to be a $40 billion industry or whatever it might be. Like, we want part of that. And I don't blame them one bit for doing it. And I don't actually think that as a brand, like I can't be upset or mad at Amazon for doing that because I would do the same fucking thing.
Yeah. And I think to your point there, last point is that they also give you a mechanism to also be a part of that.
Yeah.
It's not like they're just competing totally against you. They're also giving you a mechanism to say like, hey, you can join the party and do this well. It unfortunately also feeds their flywheel to make them even stronger and bigger in the future. But in the short term, you at least have mechanism to join some of this type of thing. And I kind of want to jump a little bit back towards like the chronological order here. We talked a little bit around like the early 2010s or late 2000s in terms of like just people didn't really understand anything around Amazon in terms of the supplement category. And then you had going into like the mid 2010s, you kind of mentioned where you started to have sellers jump on there, retailers, or maybe somebody like Robert Oliver, who was like a third-party seller or power seller that was buying a bunch of things wholesale and putting them on, or maybe trying to work with some of these brands. And you had the initial kind of flow of products, and you had customers that were going and realizing, hey, there's some really good prices on the supplements that I buy all the time, even better pricing a lot of times than where I was shopping. And it started to create a little bit more of a kind of a sales generating flywheel there for the category. And then that made more people jump in, more sellers. Distributors started to work with some of these sellers. And as a brand, especially one, if you kind of put yourself back into that area, you were blindly operating a lot of times with who was buying your product from distribution. So you're seeing these POs come in from Europa or Muscle Foods, or I don't remember what it was called back then. Basically, they would be putting in these POs. You're like, wow, I'm crushing it. You know, Europa's crushing it with me. And then you didn't really realize where that product was going. It was you were giving these big, massive buy-in orders to these companies that maybe you didn't know all that well, and you didn't realize that they were Amazon like power sellers. And essentially, what they were doing was creating some kind of like more supply than you had for demand on the platform, which was driving the price down because you, as a brand owner, didn't know that you had to actually like manage all that, manage the price integrity or whatever. And that was kind of what created the hate of the supplement industry, was because it totally crushed the price integrity behind there. So everybody was looking at this and saying like, man, like what? How do we even manage this? How do we do this? It's killing our pricing. Body.com's pissed off at us. GNC's pissed off at us. Everybody's pissed off because like people can buy the product for cheaper on Amazon than they can buy it through us. Like, and there's all this kind of virtuous cycle that just kind of kept happening. That was kind of the phase that fed what you were talking about with like the Mr. Olympia thing, where Body.com, GNC, partners and things started to feel a little bit of the pain that was caused by Amazon. That was a lot around like just the pricing structure, and people were able to get prices a little bit better on Amazon, and that was feeding more customers going there. So you had Amazon just kind of giving a big like fuck you, which was actually like, I think Body.com was the title sponsor for like the years before, and Amazon moves in last minute and is like, we'll take it, we'll take this, because we're seeing a ton of traction in the category. We see the potential, we see the margins, we see whatever. And I actually was kind of commenting back in 2015 and 16, I think 17, around that, the real reasons behind what Amazon was doing. And you kind of pointed to this, but back then people really weren't understanding. They just thought, oh, they're trying to get exposure with customers. Oh, this is a great exposure piece for Amazon because now people are going to know they can buy a supplement. Like if you were at those shows, they didn't have a booth really. They had literally, the first year was like literally some iPhone chargers or something.
Yeah,
like that was literally what they had. Yeah. So they weren't really trying to push you to buy supplements on their thing. What they wanted was relationships. They wanted to be in the building. They wanted to know who the movers and shakers were at Glanbia, at Muscle Farm, at BPI, at whatever. They wanted to get those. Also, they wanted to know the suppliers. They wanted to know the contract manufacturers. And all those people are in Vegas at one time. So it was one of those things where Amazon was really trying to build relationships that was going to help them in the future. And you kind of mentioned like kind of the next step was the private label. that was kind of what this all kind of turned into, was that Amazon had some ambitions to own their own brands or have the ability to do that in the future. And that 2015 to 2017 was really the time when Amazon built those relationships that are now providing the benefit.
And then off those relationships, and then they became on the platform, they were able to see again back what was selling, and then they decided to say, let's jump into this industry. Let's jump into this. And they came out with Amazon Basics, I think was just like your typical capsules and pills, but now they actually have, I believe, protein powders. I'm shocked it wasn't as accelerated as I thought it was going to be, because for a second there, it seemed like, okay, boom, boom, and then it kind of became quiet. But like they are, I don't know, like what do they have right now for a plethora of products within our space? Do you know? I mean, do they have performance powders like pre-workout and stuff as well? Because I haven't looked lately, and honestly, candidly, I'm not familiar with what's going on over there with their private label brand.
Yeah, the Amazon Elements is their kind of mainstay, I guess, brand, but it's mostly caps and pills. I think that they do a really good job with like transparency and a lot of things on there. They actually are leading the way in a lot of like strategies that people could look at and be like, oh, this is kind of interesting. But they also have a lot of the brands, private label brands that they that aren't called Amazon X or whatever it is.
Is it like Power or PWR or some weird name?
You have all these different brands. You have about 40 in the category that are either owned by Amazon, like they've taken ownership of them, or they are still in like this accelerator mode where basically they're not owned by Amazon, but they're basically they have a leverage to sell them. They have a clause in their contracts that they could buy them based around velocities and things like that. So you have 40 brands in total that are exclusive to Amazon in the category. Now, out of those 40, not many of them are like making like a material difference.
Right.
The far and away, probably what you're talking about, like with we're saying sports nutrition products, is probably going to be either like you had that P2N brand, which was kind of like the first one in there, or there was, now it's totally losing track of it. But there's also on the supplement side more of just like general categories. We have like a Solimo brand, which has like, that's basically their consumer packaged good brand, like a Up and Up from or an Equate coming from like a Target or a Walmart. It's like their catch-all, it's their everything.
Sure.
But within that brand, they have protein bars, energy drinks, they have supplements, they have all kinds of things. They also have like paper towels and diapers and anything in between. But that by far is like their biggest revenue stream in terms of like supplements, even though it has a ton of other things within it. But overall, the category, like if you're counting both like the accelerator, our brands, and the private label brands, you name it, they have it at this point.
And you mentioned just a lot of things there, which makes Amazon just such an attractive platform as a consumer, right? Like that's why putting your supplements on there is a big thing, because you can go to bodybuilding.com, but you can only buy supplements on bodybuilding.com. Now, with Amazon, you can add supplements to your cart. You can add an iPad to your cart. You can add a bicycle to your cart. You can add Josh Shaw to your cart. You can do a lot of different things on Amazon. I haven't been adopted for this podcast since we started. So, but I'm saying you can get a lot of different things on Amazon, and as a shopping experience, like consumers do like that. Now, not everybody can do that. Like we try to do that over at Supplement Warehouse too. Like the owner of Supplement Warehouse when I was there wanted to sell like oils and all this other kind of shit. Like our name was Supplement Warehouse. Okay, we weren't like a place you'd come for that type of stuff. So it was a stupid business decision on his part. But Amazon is just an attractive platform. Not only that, not only were they beating bodybuilding.com on price, like they were beating everybody on shipping with the Prime model, right? So Prime would cost the supplement brands more money. Like to be Prime eligible, you as a brand would pay a little bit extra or give up a little bit more margin to be part of Prime, because we all know like if a consumer can get a product in 2 days versus 3, they will pay extra for it, and they want shipping here and they want it yesterday. So that was ultimately like another thing on Amazon that made it attractive. But there are brands today, Josh, that currently still do not play on Amazon. And that's a strategic choice by them. We've talked about it so many times, but like Ghost, right? Ghost isn't on Amazon. Do you believe, as a supplement brand today in 2020, that you should be on Amazon?
I would say for the vast majority of people that are listening to this, the answer is probably yes, they should be, unless they have a very strong reason not to be, be that a Ghost or a 1st Phorm or something where they're trying to build different things that maybe Amazon doesn't work properly within that. They don't feel like they're going to get the benefit possible. Ghost's reasons are much different than 1st Phorm's, and they're different than other ones as well. They all kind of have different reasons. But just from like a strength perspective, or just to put this into kind of an idea, like most consumer packaged goods listings get more hits to their Amazon listings than they do to their website. So this is kind of turned into almost the first website. This is, if you are, if you're looking to get your information out on your brand, on your product, more than likely people are going to find it on Amazon through their search engine, because I think over 50% of consumer product searches happen on Amazon. It doesn't happen on Google anymore. So you're basically missing out on all of that right off the bat, which might be okay in some cases, like I was saying with Ghost or something like that. There might be a reason why you're giving that up in the short term for something in the long term. But for the vast majority of supplement brands, what is kind of happening right now, especially the ones that maybe aren't looking long term, they don't really have a very strong brand experience, they don't really have all their ducks in a row, the things we're talking about before, they're trying to replace revenue right now. They have a bunch of brick and mortar revenue that they used to have maybe 5 years ago, 3 years ago, that dried up. It's no longer there. It's not there anymore. So where do you turn? You turn now to Amazon for that. So you're giving up, again, you're kind of like short-term thinking. You're trying to replace revenue. You're not necessarily thinking about what is this doing to me in the long term or my brand in the long term. That's not even a thought. Thing is, like, I want to keep the lights on. I want to grow my business. And the only way to do that is replace revenue that I had lost to the only place where revenue is really going. The easy place where revenue is going is Amazon. I mean, obviously, somebody would love to get on Target's shelves or Walmart shelves or 7-Eleven shelves, but that's not realistic for 99% or more of the brands in the space. So all those people that can get some replacement of revenue, it's the easiest place to turn is Amazon.
Yeah. I'm interested because you meet with a lot of supplement brands on a consulting basis. How many of the brands would you say in the last couple of years have you worked with that aren't on Amazon? Not by choice, just because they don't know how or they don't know where to start.
I would say that dwindles by the year. I would say if you're thinking back, 3 years or so, there was a good amount of them. I'd say now today there's, like I said, a handful of them that I could point to that I work with or that I know of that do not, and that's because they have a bigger reason. What I think is shifting recently is that a lot of times these brands were not even really managing their own Amazon, like in the sense where like they were just letting third-party sellers be the owners of these listings. They weren't really even worried about it. They were like, hey, we have listings, we have sales, we have whatever, this is great.
Right.
But now you're having these brands realize that they have to take ownership of these listings, be it through like a totally gated, exclusive type of an environment where like they're the only seller because they want to manage everything as best they can. They want to manage all the variables as possible, or they go, hey, we're going to put ourselves or maybe just one power seller, like one exclusive seller that maybe is really good at maybe being a backup or maybe even being really good at optimizing the listing and stuff, like have them do a lot of the work, but you just have one or just that themselves and you as a seller, and that's it. And that's kind of where you're seeing like it at now. You don't see a lot of brands, and honestly, if you do, it just shows just the terrible business practices within the brand, is that if they have like 35 sellers on a listing, you're like, it doesn't make any sense, because it goes back to the original point that I made, was that you only have so much organic demand on the platform. If 10 people are coming in for your product and you don't change any of the levers, like you don't do more marketing, you don't drive more traffic, you don't do anything, like you're still going to have 10 people that are going to come back. Just because you add 15 new sellers that add 150 new product inventory to that listing doesn't mean that demand increases. It actually just means that it's the whole supply demand. You have the price that goes down, and that's the only way that more demand happens, is that the price incrementally goes down and demand starts to go up. So that's what you see every once in a while. Still, you don't see it as much. 3 years ago, you saw it a lot, and people are starting to realize and wake up to the point where they're saying we needed to get in here and manage this because it's exposing our bad business practices. And I want to like kind of stay on that point for a little bit. Amazon does not do anything negative on purpose to a brand. It's that the brand, in some element of their strategies, practices, procedures, they have something that's poor. There's something that's wrong. Something is broken. And because of that, Amazon exposes it to a level that makes it apparent to them, and then either they have to accept it and say, how do I fix my business, or they blame it on Amazon and they go, Amazon's a bad guy, Amazon did this to me, Amazon is obviously the one that's the issue here.
Of course they are.
It's not. It's the brand that, incentivized their sales guy the wrong way. It's the distributor contract that they didn't ask the right questions, or they didn't put in the right clauses, or it's the them not being able to pull the right levers on the platform to get the right drivers that are going to have to create more supply or create more demand. They're not really doing a lot of those things. They're just kind of saying, Amazon's the bad guy. I used to have my cushy seat in my office that I didn't really have to worry about, and I got a bodybuilding.com order every Monday, and I was good. Now all of a sudden, I have all these problems I have to deal with.
They're good problems to have. You should anyway. I mean, it depends on where you're at, but yeah, I mean, what I love about you, Josh, is like you've dealt within the Amazon world way more than I have, so you bring a different kind of like perspective to it. So like when you go into brands, and you talk about Amazon, or you talk about where they should and should not be, like you give them a pretty much full 360 view of what it should be. So just a cheap plug for Jay Shaw Consulting. If you're brand listing, you're like, I'm lost, I don't know where to start. His name is Josh Shaw. He charges, like I said, very cheap. You can look for his services on Amazon.com. It's kind of a domain that people know, and you can get his services. I think they're on sale right now for like $3,000 an hour or something like that. So
yeah, I have a flash sale right now. Lightning deal. Yeah.
If you guys liked what you heard here on the podcast, obviously hit that subscribe button. Whether it's on iTunes, Spotify, or at YouTube. We are on social media channels as well. Facebook, LinkedIn is a big place that you're active on. I'm trying to get more and more active there as well too. Any topics that people have, hit us up. Josh has been like pulling these topics out of a magician hat, and they're great. Like this is another great topic to talk because it's an interesting world. I mean, we could start talking about all the other ones too, like Alibaba and all these other different platforms. And Walmart.com in itself is a platform we could spend an entire episode on. But I think most people are familiar with Amazon. Josh, leave us with some words of wisdom. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Words of wisdom. I would say that any kind of opportunity you have in the market, there is always a positive approach to it. It's a matter of, do you understand why you're doing what you're doing, and understand how to get that out of it is important. If you're just going into something blindly, you're going to always be in trouble. Amazon has a ton of benefit to it, just like any other decision. But if you don't really know why you're doing what you're doing, you're going to struggle.
And if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, again, Josh Shaw Consulting, very, very cheap services.